Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Friday, May 9th, 2025. As always, let me begin with our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Moving on to our news. As mentioned, today is Friday, May 9th. There is essentially no scheduled data points today, but we do have a slew of speakers. Beginning with, well, it's already in progress. We've had Michelle Barr at 5:55. Williams spoke at 6:15. Kugler at 6:45. Coming up at 8:30, we have Williams, which we see here on the calendar. 8:35, Per Lee. 9:10 Williams. Goolsby at 10. 10:40 Barr. 11:30 Williams. So a lot of speakers. We also have later on tonight, Hammock is speaking, but it's after the bell. So a lot of speakers. This is a day to have your news feed on, which really you should have your news feed on all the time. If you're a Convergent member, you get a news squawk as part of your membership, which is a huge benefit. I had to pay a lot more to get one as a prop trader. But anyway, let's move on to our charts. Okay, before we get started on the charts, I would like to ask you to please like and subscribe if anything in this video is useful to you, or if you just enjoy the chart talk in the morning. That would be great. We're trying to get to 10,000. And wouldn't it be nice to be a 10,000th subscriber? That would be kind of cool to make the odometer click. But I'll let you know that I care just as much about the 9,999th subscriber. I don't play favorites. Regardless, let's talk about charts. So this chart, daily bars, S&P 500, full session. This is the one we begin with. Not a lot has changed except the color of the monthly profiles. I made them gray today. I just thought it would blend in a little bit better. But regardless, the narrative we've been following here, we put in a potential low, potentially. We had a huge rally on April 9th. We hung out within the range of that day before eventually grinding higher. We were looking for this to recover the range of March, which is right here, which we did, and then we took out the March VPOC, which is our target. The next target, obviously, is the March high. The full session March high is the 73 quarters. The RTH session is the 39s, and we took the 39s yesterday. So just kind of carrying on our narrative here, let's zoom in a little bit. The thing that we were watching for yesterday that I kind of cautioned for, we see a clear bias for higher prices, and we've recovered a range that everybody sees. And so the targets are just super, super obvious. Like I said, the 39s, 40s is the RTH high, and the 73s above as the full session high, and then continuing up higher, we have the 21s, the 5821s, which is a composite C VPOC right there, which is a huge target. But the thing that I kind of cautioned yesterday is this, when we see that support come in just so clear and everybody in the market has the same position, you're a lot more apt to potentially see what we saw, which is just a very weak take of the high and then a market that fell right back into this balance. So that's what we got today. It's still the bullishness is still pretty strong, but we're starting to tip over into some balance here. Starting to see these highs. We're taking the high, but then falling back. So this is starting to look a lot more balancy, but still with a skew for higher prices. But anything could change. Let's move on to our next chart. Okay, here's our market profile chart. And just following the narrative we had here is the prior week's high. We had the grindy balance higher, moving value higher. Starting here on this day, we began to move value lower. We had these 2 days which overlapped and reiterated an agreement on value in this area. Then yesterday we had the gap higher, and we were looking at the potential targets, either gap close or the targets above, beginning with the 40s. And we actually got both of them, which just sort of reiterates what I mentioned on the last chart, which is that we have a skew for higher prices here, but it's starting to get very balanced. You're starting to see a lot of overlap. Other things we can notice about this chart is, we opened here, green arrow, and we explored prices in both directions. Looking at this distribution up here, where we have our VPOC, this is where our VPOC was, but we were unable to hold prices up here, and we moved lower to actually settle back within this range. So for me, with the shape of this profile, this zone, our 5710 zone, is very important for me. If we're, holding in this range right here, this is pretty right around our settlement. This is it's pretty ambiguous here. But if we get a push above the 5710s, that opens us up for a pretty clear trade to target the prior VPOC and potentially the prior high at the end of the week. Or if we drop below the 70s here in this zone, then we have targets of the 50s, the mid-century. We have a naked settle, and we have a naked VPOC down here. So there are pretty clear targets on a push away from this in either direction. And in a way, that's a bit of a caution flag to me, because I don't necessarily feel like there's a very strong edge to which way we will push from here. It seems pretty well priced. So that is a bit of a caution flag for potential chop today as well. We have no data, just speakers. So very clear targets. However, in my opinion, not exceptionally clear where, if there's any edge to which we may get today, or if we get them both. Regardless, let's go on to the next chart and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart. Let's go over what we see here. Obviously, well, not so obviously, but as I mentioned yesterday, the lavender areas are the overnight trade, and the white areas are the RTH trade. So what we can see here is, after we tested our lows around the 5600, we kind of had a choppy push up, and then once we got above this MCV-POC area in this region, we sort of were able to expand prices higher, expand rotations higher, and we were able to take the high of this balance area, which was the prior week's high. There was some news help here, so we need to be aware of that. But anyway, what can we say now about this? Well, we can say that we have our MCV-POC region here, and we have this very sort of choppy, just expansion higher that was able to take the high, but fell back lower to settle. Our settlement is the 84 halves. So what I can say about this trade right now is, I think that there is support waiting below the low, and I think there's resistance waiting above the high, which means that for me, like on any, first off, we need to be very aware that this area up here, as I said in the last chart, this key LVN region is resistance. And we've seen pretty clearly that there are buyers waiting below, so we know that there's support below. So what's that mean? Well, for me, first, you have to be, I would say, be cautious of an inside day. Be cautious of a day that may spend a fair amount of time, or just a fair amount of rotations bouncing around within range. What opportunities for excursion might there be? Well, we'll start with, first we need to be aware of where the resistance is, in my opinion, on pushes up. We'll talk about the bullish ideas first. So the bullish idea would be, first, if we are able to hold this overnight low, take the overnight high, as I mentioned in the last chart, if we can get above this key LVN, above this 5709 region I've been talking about, that would start to be the first shot across the bow for the bulls are starting to take control. Holding above the key LVN, we'd look for a test of yesterday's VPOC, which would be the next waypoint. And if we get up into this area, basically, if we can just get up into this area and start to expand prices, that'll be the best indication we have that we may test this high. Which for me, this would be a trade if it sets up, able to get above this LVN, work to scale at this VPOC, look at the high. If we're able to continue, I've talked about these targets for weeks on end, so we know where they are. But what I want to caution us about right now, I mean, this is a pretty obvious trade, in my opinion, if it plays out. And when trades get too obvious, sometimes they don't work. So how could this not work? We could easily just push up in here, and whatever quorum of sellers was providing resistance could just load the offers and see us just fall back down just like we did yesterday. That's a possibility we need to be aware of. As well as I just said, even on a take of this high, I have to be at least initially aware that we could see just more selling at the high, which just pushes us back into range for something like this that just kind of doesn't say too much. Takes the high, falls back, still preserves the low. That would be kind of a nothing day, and we need to be aware of that. Could we trade outside in during this? Of course we could if that's in your plan, if it sets up. So be aware of that. What are our bearish ideas? Well, first of all, like I said, if we just kind of peek our heads above this key LVN and start to roll over, if we can get below this overnight VPOC area, that would be the first bit of evidence that we may start to test the overnight low and potentially explore prices lower. If we take this overnight low and we don't immediately reject, like I said, we have a couple targets right here in the 5650 region. We have a naked settlement. We have the MC VPOC of the region, and we do have the VPOC of this day. I believe so we have the volume point of control up here. The time point of control is a little bit lower. So there are targets to be hit if we lose the overnight low and do not reject prices around yesterday's RTH low. I do have to say, though, same thing, like I would tend to think that if we trade these prices, there is going to be some support and potential reversion on the initial test of the low. So though, we have to be aware of that. Basically the reversion forces outside of the prior range. Now let's quickly discuss, what if that doesn't happen? What if we lose these prices here? However it happens, maybe we even test the high and fall back. Maybe we don't. Maybe we just push up to the VPOC and fall, or maybe we don't even get there. Regardless, what happens if we lose this shaky uptrend line? Well, for me, losing this, first we'd have to get into the 50s area below yesterday's low and start to see acceptance and the inability to get back in. If we start to see that, then I would be open to continued excursion lower. I would look, my next target would be the value low of this day, right around the 27s, 25 area. And then below that, I would just go zone to zone with Sentry as another key figure right here, knowing that Sentry is where the support came in. But I'll be honest with you, if we lose the 50s, get into the 25s, and start to trade Sentry, I wouldn't be surprised to see Sentry either flip offered before it reverts, or if something really significant happens, maybe we lose Sentry and we end the week pushing lower. That would really surprise everybody. So we always have to be ready for the surprise. That would surprise everyone that traded long in this area. But regardless, I'm going to wrap it up here because I think this is pretty complete. The first, just to tie a bow on it, we need to be aware that on a test of either of the prior day's extremes, I would expect to see at least initially the opposing force and an attempt at reversion. However, if we test either of the prior day's extremes and instead show the gumption to continue, well, above these targets, we know them very well. The 40s were hit yesterday. We have the naked VPOC at 50, and if it continues, we have the 76s. If we get through the 76s, then this area is just the cherry on top for the long. 21s are the big target. I wouldn't expect them to get hit today, but if we end the week strong, maybe that would be next week's target. Trading lower, as I said, below yesterday's RTH low, we have a slew of targets in the 50 handle, which I would expect to provide support, but if they do not, we're open to a test of value low of this day, which is the 25 area. And if that doesn't hold, we'll look at the 5600s, which is an area with a lot of eyes on it. So that's basically what I'm seeing today. If there are any questions, please ask me in the chat room. I'm always happy to discuss or clarify further. And if there's nothing else, I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's Friday, so you want to mind your risk and you want to be sure that no matter what, you end today feeling good about yourself, which should not be tied to your P&L, should be tied to how well you follow a process, because that's what you can control. So that's what I got for you today. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. I hope your wonderful morning continues. And most of all, I hope that you find some way today to improve your trading that is not related to your P&L. That's what I got for you. I'm going to head out. Any questions, ask me in the chat room. Ciao.